Go right up to Noah's face.
Alright, we're back. Everybody have a good break? Everybody hungry?
I feel like you're that like teacher the Monday after spring break. You don't have a good break?
Yeah. What did everybody do on their break? Everybody go anywhere exciting?
I've heard my tree.
Can I go to Florida?
I hate the kid that's like, I slept. Shut up. Like, why did we even talk?
Everybody have a good snack on their break?
I still have that
Alright, we're gonna move into math.
Just once in a while, just look back and have
No,
a
so
good laugh.
I was lighter.
Alright, here's what we're gonna do. I have handed you out. I'm not gonna talk about it much, except this is a vocabulary sheet I use with a lot of people. This, there's all sorts of things you can do to get lists of good vocabulary words. What I did was I basically took for a year, as I was working with people, words that they didn't know. I just kept putting them on a list. At the end of the year or so, I put the list out. So this, pretty much, every word on this list is or has been on SATs.
Who wants to make a quiz?
So it's a good list. All right, who's ready for math? All right, so math starts here on page 2, page 9, sorry, which is section 2. Okay, let me tell you, we're going to take, here's our plan. We take about 15 minutes or so, work on math. We take about 15 minutes to work on the writing, and then we're going to have some questions if you have them, and then we're going to wrap up. So, alright, so let me tell you about math here for a minute. Basically, alright, there's 4 steps we're going to do when you work on math, okay? Now, today, the scope of what we got, this is definitely not a comprehensive look at it. But number 1, the first thing you do is you look at the question. See if I can show you this. What is the
Recording everything.
Alright, what is the question? There's a lot of audios. Okay. First thing you say to yourself is, what is the question asking for? Okay? Alright? So for example, number 1, what's the question asking for? If 3, parentheses, t plus n, parentheses, plus 4 is 22, then t plus n is what? So the first thing you do is you get clear on what the question wants. Okay? Now it sounds basic, and it kind of is, but I'm telling you, eventually you'll find people make more mistakes because they don't understand the question, or they never understood it to begin with, then they don't understand the math of it. The second thing you do, you just say, what do I know? Okay? In other words, what is the question telling you to help you? Now, in number 2, what we want, what it asks for is t plus n. What we know is that 3 times t plus n plus 4 is 22. Okay? Now, the third thing you do, which isn't really going to be as helpful every time, is use a strategy. Okay? There are 2 basic strategies I'm going to teach you. Number 4 is you actually do the math. Okay? So, look at the question. You say, what's it really asking? Okay? That's not hard. It's almost always at the end of it. Every once in a while it's not, but for the most part, it's the last thing you're going to read. We're really sort of ignoring everything else at first. Then we sweep back through a second time, and you focus on what do you know? What's it give you to help you? Now, there's 2, right, let's take one more. There's 2 basic strategies I'm going to teach you, okay? Number 1, right, put the camera on.
Oh my god. That was the greatest picture of all time. Jason,
Wow.
What's the camera?
Jason, let me see that.
That's a good one. The last one to Jacob.
Alright.
Stop.
Now,
Did you see the one?
you doing?
That's the best one. Mike, you should put that on Twitter.
No
Please.
Twitter.
Really want it.
Alright, now listen.
Jason.
So here's the deal. What's it want? What do you know? What strategy can you use? I'm going to talk about strategies for a few minutes. And then you basically do the math. The first 3 steps usually determines how well you're going to do on the math. How well you can figure out what's going on and applying the strategy. The last thing you want to do, sort of paradoxically, is actually jump in and just start doing math. Sometimes it's no big deal, but often leads to mistakes. Now here's the strategy here, okay? Now there are different names for this. If you have taken any other classes or tutors or books or videos or anything you've done, there are different names for both these things. So this is the words I use. Back solving means, in my definition, we know for number 1, the answer is either 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. Okay? Can't be 8, can't be 26, can't be negative 10, whatever. So here's the strategy. It's very simple. T plus M is one of them. What you do is you just work backwards and replace it. Alright? So back solving means we got a list of answers. We're going to take them, put them back into the problem, see which one works. So, for example, if T plus M was 3, what's 3 times 3? 9. 9 plus 4 is 13. Is that 22? No. So it can't be 3. Cross it out. We just run down the list. You could also do it algebraically. How would you do this algebraically? You subtract 4, you divide by 3. So 22 minus 4 is 18, divide by 3 is 6. So the answer should be D. Alright? Number 2 is basically the same thing. You're just going to put numbers in. Alright. Try number 2. Anybody not do 2 yet? Alright, we'll jump over to the next page in a second. Alright. If you want, you can kind of work ahead. I'm going to focus on numbers 4 and 6. Actually, I'm going to focus on 4, 5, and 6. Unless people want help with 3. 3 is a geometry problem. If you haven't had geometry, it's a little bit tougher. But what's a perimeter mean? Well, there's 2 things here you got to know. You got to know perimeter, you got to know equilateral. So we're looking, is everybody on number 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So on number 3, what's the problem want? We want the perimeter of ABC. So ABC is the big triangle. Now what do you know? What do they tell you? Each of the 4 small triangles is equilateral. What does that mean?
Their sides are equal.
Sides are all the same. Good. And what else do you know about them? Perimeter is 24. So what's perimeter mean?
The length of all the sides added up.
Very good. Josh, excellent. So here's the thing. Triangle has 3 sides. So if the perimeter is 24, how long is each side?
8.
8. Excellent. So here's what we got. Everything is 8. So what does the question actually want? Perimeter the big one, right? Which is going to be what?
40.
Good. It's basically 6 eighths. Or 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. There you go. Now, let's talk about number 4 for a second. This is probably the only one we're going to get to do, although I'm going to show it to you on 5. There's our strategy called plugging in. Okay? So, what does this problem want? How much does it cost to cut the lawn and pull weeds for H in hours? That's what we want. What do you know? Well, we know two things. It's $30 to cut the lawn, and what else? Yes, yes? What do we know in number 4? It's $30 to pull the weeds, or to cut the lawn. What else? So here's the deal. Here's the way you would do this. And this is a simplistic problem because the algebra really isn't that hard. So here's what you do. We're just going to say, how many hours do you want to pull weeds for?
H.
Well, it's H, but let's assign a number. So what do you want H to be?
2.
2. Okay. So here's the deal. Now what you want to do is, so we have plugged in. This is why the strategy is called plugging in. We're going to plug a value in for our number H2. So, if the company showed up, cut the lawn, pulled weeds for 2 hours, how much would they charge? Forget the answers here for a second. How much would they say? 60, correct. So here's the idea. If H is 2, our answer is 60. Alright? Now, here's how you finish the problem. We got 5 answers here. Go down the list, substitute H with 2, and see which one equals 60. What's the first one? H over 15 is 2 15ths. Is that 60? So get rid of it. 45 over H. No. Which one worked?
E.
E. Now again, this is not the hardest problem because you probably could just figure it out by algebra. What I'm trying to do is show you an example of the technique. What if H was 10? If H was 10, it would have been 180. 30 plus 150. Then you go down the list, see which one spits out that answer. Now, let me show you something with number 5. Or actually, try 5. 5's not a hard problem, but it's sort of not a normal math problem that you have in school. Normally in school, you don't solve for 2x minus 8. What's this problem want? Number 5. Be careful.
2x minus 8.
It wants 2x minus 8. Now, almost 100% of the time in school, when you do a math problem, you're not solving for anything but a single variable. So what you basically got to do is figure out x, and then plug it back in and figure your number out. So what's x?
8.5.
Yeah, do you need a calculator?
8.25.
Let's see.
That's wrong, actually.
Here, let's do this. So we got 26. See if this actually works. We add 8. So what's 26 plus 8? 34. Oh, not showing up.
It's on the top left.
Right there. Yeah. Alright. Alright, now what are we going to do? Right, so it is 8.5. Now what do we do?
What? You're wrong? Yeah.
There we go. Now this is the key strokes you can use. Most, look, you can use a calculator on the test. You don't have them here. That's not it. Yes. If you had a calculator, you definitely would have got it right.
Okay.
All right.
Calculator thinks like you.
Let's take a look at number 6. Let's take a look at 6. Now, this is probably the first problem on here that's what kind of pejoratively is called an SAT problem. All right, here's what you got. Which of the following? Now, whenever it says which of the following, immediately you know you got to be working on your list. You're sort of forced to backside. You're forced to use the answers and work back. Which of the following expresses a relationship between x and y? All 3 rows of the table. Now, what do you think we're going to do here? Any
You
suggestions?
just go down and just plug it in.
That's exactly what we're going to do. Excellent answer. So what's we're going to do? So if x is 1, based on the table, what does y have to be? Look at the chart. So if x is 1, what's y? 2. Here's what you do. Put 1 in for x, see if it spits out 2. So does it work for A? How about B? How about C? How about D? So what's the only one that doesn't work for 1 and 2? And which ones doesn't it work for? Again. Then what you got to do is, so you're going to eliminate 1 or 2, then do it with 2, so it's got to spit out 5. And you basically have to find the one that's going to work for all 3 sets of numbers. Okay? Right, the answer ultimately is... It is E. Here's the problem. You got to be careful because it works for a lot of them. The only one that works for all 3 is E. Alright, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We kind of got up to 6, so just work on your own. Start with 7. Okay? And we've got about maybe 5, 8 more minutes left on math. And then we're going to jump into reading. So I'm going to flash. This is our strategy again. Oh, what happened? So this is basically plan you want. So I know it's a little sloppy. But what's the question asking for? Okay? What do you know? What does the problem tell you that you're going to need? Can you use a strategy? Now there's lots of strategies. I'm only talking about 2. But the 2 that are most useful and the 2 that come up the most, 2 of the most common, are back solving, which means you take your answers and work them back in, or plugging in, which we did on the H1, where you replace the variable with a number and you work it that way. So we'll look at the problem, say what's going on here. And like I said, almost always it's at the end. Every once in a while it's not. They're almost always looking at the end. Then you go back, you look at what's in there. Then you try to look at the answers, see if you can work in reverse. Okay?
There's 10 people out of the 1 week.
Okay, one of the techniques you can do here, one of the things you can do on 7,
That's what I got.
do one of these things.
You add them and then split that.
Yeah. Wait, so you get 28 and then what do you do?
Do one of these Venn diagram.
Well, 28, 30 minus 1, because 30 total people, 28 of them like one of them.
Yeah, this is a technique kind of problem. Oh.
How I erased it? Yes, we do.
Yeah, I worked out number 7. I'll explain that if you want. So here's how you would do it, but keep working if you move ahead. What you do is, this is called a Venn diagram. Okay? So this is roller coasters, rides. Okay? So you just pop in the numbers they tell us. 22, 10, 16. Now the idea is this 10 is redundant because it includes this. So you subtract 10 from both of these. So this 16 means 6 like only roller coasters, 10 like both, but together they made the original 16. Okay? Same over here. So how many people just liked rides? 12. What? Jake, where are you going? Let's give Jake a hand here. What about Hannah? You walking home?
No, I'm
Wow, Jacob.
Alright. Alright, anyway.
Jacob, where are you going?
So this is Alright, Jake, good job.
Where are you going?
Take all your paraphernalia.
Jacob, what's more important than to make the grade PSAT study session?
Obviously something.
Wow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good work.
I think he's going to a different tutor.
He's going to somebody else's PSAT class. He'll report back. Alright, so here, let me go over this again real quick. This is what's known in test prep as a technique problem, which means whenever you get a problem like this, if you just basically do it the same way every time, you usually get it. Obviously the numbers are the numbers, but the technique is you make a Venn diagram and you put in what you're given. Then you subtract out the common numbers. So this is people only like rides, both, only roller coasters. But this circle, there's still 16 like roller coasters. It's just 10 like both, so they're counted twice. Then you take the 3 numbers here and you add them up. So there's only 28 people accounted for. Since the survey asked 30 people, 2 didn't like neither, which is letter A. So the harder versions of these would have 3. Let's say rides, roller coasters, and water slides or something. I don't know.
Could you just subtract the 10 people that like both from one of the sides?
No, because you gotta count for it twice. Well, see, if you added up 22, 10, and 16, what do you get? 48. So you gotta take it out twice. See, if you took 48 minus 20, you're here. But it's just not usually how you do it.
Well, how I thought of it was, if it was just, let's say, for instance, it was the people that like the rides, all like both, then I could subtract the 10 just out of the one side, and then add that up, and then subtract it from 30. And I got the same, yeah, I got the same answer.
Alright. Well, what's the most important thing? Yeah, the most important thing is to get the right answer. And you could actually add to that. The most important thing is getting the right answer and doing the least amount of time possible. So there's a certain amount of justifying your ends by your means by your ends. So if you get it right, you kind of don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Try to get up to number 10. Maybe we'll pass. We're gonna do a quick review on this, and we're gonna move into our writing, and we're gonna wrap up. Does anybody have a question about anyone up till number 10? Alright, you wanna look at 10? Alright. You get a new screen. I'll go over 10. Try to do 11 is a good problem from a kind of SAT technique. We'll go over 10 and 11.
Yeah.
That's a good problem. Alright, everybody finish up the one you're on. I'm going to kind of work through 10 with everybody. And maybe 11 also.
I didn't even see that. Number tries to be an even number. Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at number 10. Now, here's the thing. Is it possible... Alright, well here's a little trivia. Let's review. How many sentence completion questions?
13.
Yes. How many short readings?
5, 9, 8.
8. How many long readings? That's the tough one. That's one nobody remembers. 5.
No, there's 3, but there's 27 questions.
Oh, nice. Pencil.
Pencil.
What
Which
color? What color? No, green. That's the best one.
There's 2 greens.
How? So it's 13, 8, 27. How many math questions? I didn't give you this yet. Anybody want to guess? Close. A little bit more. It's 38. Okay? There's 28 multiple choice. There's 10. You got to put your own answer in. Okay? All right. Everybody look over here. This is 10. Now, here's the deal. Of the 38 math questions, what's the probability you're going to zip very, very easily through all 38? Probably small.
You can get them all wrong.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, and get them correct.
That's the
without
Jason
any
Green thing to do.
So here's what I would like you to come out of here today at least with. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you everybody's going to get everyone right easily. But here's the trick. At the very least, could you always look at a problem and decide what it wants? So let's say you had no idea how to do 10, but what's the problem want? We want G of A. Okay? So that's kind of our starting point. What's G of A? Then we circle back. We say, all right, I still may not know what I'm doing, but what do I know? Well, I got a function. F of x is x cubed minus 3, and g of x is 6x. F of A is 24. So here's what we're going to do. Okay. Now you might get stalled, but here's how you actually do it. Who's had functions before?
What?
Functions. Yeah. We're just a little more advanced algebra. This is kind of like a medium, intermediate algebra. Okay. A couple ways we can do this. Okay. F of x. Alright, so here's the first thing. F of x is f cubed minus 3. Now they tell us f of a equals 24. Now, when you solve a function, what you basically do is you take what's inside the parentheses and you replace it. So f of a is also a cubed minus 3. Okay? Everybody see where that comes from? So, here's where it's going to kind of come together. If f of a is 24, which is given, and f of a is a cubed minus 3, which we have to figure out, a cubed minus 3 is 24. So a cubed is 27. What's a?
3.
3. 3 cubes 27.
The computer ready still.
Okay. Now, kind of circling back around. So, if g of a is going to be 6x. Wait, hang on. G of x is 6x. So that means it got a little sloppy right now, but let me talk you through this one. Okay, so here's what we gotta do. We have to basically use the f function to get a. Okay? So f of a is 24, they tell you that. F of a is a cubed minus 3. We got that by substituting into here. That's maybe the tricky step. We set these equal to each other. Solve for here. G of x is 6, so G of a is 6a. That's the same thing as we did here. Replace in the 3, 18. Okay? This is a pretty typical problem. All right, how about 11? Very different problem. This will be our last math problem for today. So a number is chosen from random. Probably is 1/5 and it's even. That's multiple of 5. What could it be? All right. Now, any suggestions how to do this one? What does this problem want? All right, here we're working on 11. Well, that's right. So what does 11 want?
An even number. Wait, no, an odd number that is not a multiple of 5, or that can be.
Well, it's basically, yeah. Well, what it wants specifically is which one from the list could be x. Now, they tell you, and this is where you got to kind of think a little bit, it's a 1/5 probability it's even in the multiple of 5, which is basically 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So what you want to do is you just want to eliminate. Which ones can it not be? Well, it can't be 20, because if it was 20, then you'd have a greater number, you'd have a 2/5 chance of it satisfying it. So what's the only one that's not a multiple of 10 or even?
15.
15, which is A. Now that's a much more difficult question. It's more complicated, it's a little more advanced math strategy. Okay? All right. Any closing questions about math? Good job.
I'm good. I'll tell you
No, I know what it is.
Like,
Right.
Money Mike sent
Yeah,
there.
what happened
I
to
throw
that,
up the
right?
bait in your grade.
You know what my reaction was?
All right, here we go. Let's shift over here. Section 5.
Still can use a calculator.
No calculator.
Why can't we use calculators in reading?
Because they think you'll cheat and put vocabulary into the calculator.
I get
Smart.
a calculator.
Because if you know what to do, there's ways you can actually put text into a
The
advanced
y,
Yeah,
y1 equals.
It would take too much time, and
The
it,
notes section
Right,
on your
that's the rule.
calculator.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but disagree with it. All right, let's talk about writing. Go back here for a second. Okay. There are 3 kinds of question in writing. Okay? If you look at the sheet, the first 11 are the first type. Okay? So I'm going to talk about these first. The second type. Oh, actually, yeah. Second type are here, starting with 21. These are the sentence corrections. Paragraph. Now, here's the problem with these. The problem is very apparent very quickly. If you don't know the grammar, you're going to struggle here a little bit. Okay? Maybe a lot. The grammar is the biggest limitation. So here's the basic technique, if you want to write this down. On the first type, on the improving sentences, here's what happens. You're given a sentence, some of the sentence, occasionally the whole sentence is underlined. It may or may not, yes.
Are we, what
No, page 30. Back.
Alright.
I know, I went in here. I know. My fault. Alright, so we're on page 30. We're on this page. Okay, now, here's the deal. The sentence may or may not have a mistake. Okay? It is possible that it won't. This is the page one. Okay, so some of it's underlined. Now here's your job. Okay? You have to decide if it's correct or incorrect, and if it's incorrect, you have to try to fix it. So here's the basic premise of what's going on. A, letter A, is the same as what's underlined. So here's your flow here. Like in math, what do you want? What do you know? In reading, we go QR, QR. Here, we're looking at this, and we're going to basically say A or not A. Because you're going to look at it and say, all right, is it correct? If you think it's correct, you just put A, you move on. Now, how many answers are there? 5. Approximately how often is it going to be A? About 1 out of 5. So there are 20 of these kind of questions spread out over a few pages. Not exactly, but approximately you're going to get 5 of each letter. It doesn't always work out perfectly. But what people tend to do is they tend to put A way more than you should. Okay? Now, so here's the flow. Number 1, look at the problem. Decide if you think it's right or wrong. If you think it's right, you put A and you're done. If you think it's not A, so let me get back in here. So here's your deal. You read the question, it's either A or not A. If it's A, in a way you're lucky because it's less work. Okay? If it's not A, you basically have 2 choices. The first strategy is what I call fix and find. And the second strategy is same as math, taxa. So here's how this works. Okay? So you read it, A, great, not A, okay, you gotta deal with the other 4.
Why is it usually A? Why is it usually A?
No, it's not usually A. But no, what I'm saying is, people have a tendency to put A more often than it is. I don't know if it's just laziness. I don't think it's laziness, but I think it's just they read it and it sounds right, so they just put A. But typically it's about 1/5 of each right. Okay, anyway, if it's not A, here's your 2 strategies. Number 1, I call fix and find. What fix and find means is, you try to fix it yourself, in other words, correct the grammar, and then find the right answer from B, C, D, E. Okay? The other thing you can do, who remembers what back solving is in math? It's like 20 minutes ago. Yes, you take the answer, work back in. You do the same thing here. Just take the correction and read it in and substitute where the blank is. Now, what's the disadvantage of this? Takes a lot of time. This section, you might want to note this. This section, you have to work the fastest. Your minutes per question in this section is much less than math per reading. It's the most in math, a little bit less in reading. Here's a lot less.
Why
Yes.
is it less here?
There's just more questions in time. You have 39 questions, you only have 35 minutes, or 30 minutes. Whereas in math, you have 18 questions, you have 25 minutes. So it's just the sheer math of how many questions you have. But you gotta work the quickest here. So the back solving technique actually is pretty good. It's just slow. Now, one of the things we could do, I'm not going to do it today, but if you were doing a more comprehensive sort of prepping program, there's about 10 common grammar mistakes that you see over and over. One of them, for example, is what they call gender disagreement, where you might have a singular subject but a plural verb. So normally you would say, Mike ran to the store, because Mike is singular. And the sentence might say, Mike run to the store, or something like that. It sounds dumb when you hear it wrong, because what's the easiest way to decide if it's right or wrong? It's just listen. Every single person, well, maybe some of you are exceptions, but in the history of civilization, pretty much everybody learns to speak before you can read. Okay, unless you're physically messed up and you can't talk, everybody who ever lived could talk before they could read. Okay? And people speak, well alright, I'll give you it's a little trivia. Comparatively speaking, how much more do people speak hours of a day than they write or read?
A lot more.
Yeah, people have studied this. Not how much?
In hours?
Yeah, like let's say you write or read 1 hour a day. How many hours do you talk or hear compared to that? Yeah, what do you say? That's not bad, it's a little high. It's 9.66666. That's a good guess though. So in other words, what the study said was, for every 1 hour that people communicate in a visual way, writing or reading, they're hearing or speaking about 10. Okay, and that's, I don't know exactly how they studied this, but that's the conclusion. So, from a grammar standpoint, the best tool you have is your ear. It's just what it sounds like. So, let's try one. Pick one. Has everybody tried any of these? Do a couple of these. Has everybody started these?
Yeah.
Alright. Everybody do this. Let's go on the same page. Everybody go to the next page. We're going to do number 5 together. Okay?
What is PSL?
English is the second language. Actually, we're not going to do 5.
Do you what language do you speak? That you can do ESL?
Well, it's ESL is when your primary language in your home is not English.
Right. Oh, so you're just teaching Spanish no matter what.
Well, there's
Diverse
ESL in
languages.
French, there's ESL in I mean, in our area, it's mostly Spanish. But there's areas of the country where this ESL is Japanese or Chinese. Around
Korean.
here,
Korean.
I don't know anywhere that isn't Spanish because it's by far the second
Right.
most common language. But that's the definition. In your home, your primary language spoken, whatever it is, that isn't English. Why? Do you want me to teach this class in Spanish?
No.
Well,
I don't know if you'd want that actually. My Spanish is
are you fluent in Spanish?
no. I burrito. See. Rojo. What else do I know in Spanish?
What about class?
Paquito.
What about the word class?
Classo? I don't know. I know casa.
Okay.
I actually was fluent in French at one point, but that's a long time
How do you
ago.
say golf?
Cake?
In Spanish.
Golf? Never golf.
I thought it was El Cake.
Alright, anyway.
I would
Alright.
say pizza.
Alright.
It's just pizza.
Everybody focus here. Ready? Let us try number 6. No, actually let's do 7. 7's a better example. Just check. Let everybody find number 7.
Wait, Justin.
Ready? So, number 7. Sinclair Lewis was the first American writer to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, and this award is not for a single book, but for his literary achievements. Okay, so we say to ourselves, right or wrong? A or not A?
Not it.
Not A, why not?
It says am. It shouldn't be am. And it's in the present.
Yeah, good. It's a bad conjunction to use the grammar. Now, you got two choices. You try to fix it yourself, and then find that answer from your list, or you can look at the list and put them back in.
It's so worded.
Now, as a rule of thumb, and I don't definitely, this is not a reason to put an answer for sure, but if you look at this, they're basically all the same. It's all literature comma. So all we really got to worry about is the second part. Now, here's the other thing I'm going to tell you about these. Okay? And again, this is sort of scratching the surface. But this is something to remember.
I bet you by page it.
Alright,
Well, you wrong.
what does this mean?
What is it?
Singular vowel
See, I knew it.
verb.
Close. V is verb.
What is SVR?
Well, that's what I'm telling you.
Subject, verb, object.
Yes, subject, verb, object. Okay?
Pencil.
This is
Pencil. Mike, pencil.
Any pencil.
okay.
Collection.
Here's the deal. When you're doing problems like this, and actually this applies a little bit. I didn't bring it up because it's a lesser of a strategy, but you can use this also in the sentence completions and reading. Make sure you put it in this order. The vast majority of the time when you speak, you make a sentence in this order. Okay? Noah went to soccer. What you don't usually say is, the soccer field was the place that Noah went. It's not incorrect, it's just not how people speak. So with these, often what the people do, what the mean people that design these tests do, is they put it out of order. The most common out of order is object, subject, verb. So what you want to do is you want to sort of rejumble it so it's in the right order. Anyway, answer on 7 is E. Why? Because you have to make sure you have a verb in that second part. What's doing the action here? Is Sinclair Lewis the one who's giving the award? No, some foundation or some organization is. That's why you need the verb given in there. Okay, do this. Skip up to page 34. Looks like this. Now these, most people find are easier. These are known as sentence corrections. Okay? Now, here's what happens. You have a sentence. Okay? And you have to figure out if there's a mistake, and there may not be. but if there is, you identify what the mistake is. Okay? Now, the nice thing about this is, well, I shouldn't say nice, but the reason these are typically easier, it's just less work. There's just less you got to do here than the type of questions we just had. In the First War, the United States Army refused accrediting women as news correspondents, even though women were reporting from the front before the United States entered the war. What's the mistake?
Accrediting.
Yes. What should it be?
Accrediting.
Well, or
To accredit.
no. This has to be. This is already a verb.
Refuse to credit.
Well, or to accredit. It has to be an infinitive version. Now you don't need to know that.
What if we just said that at the same time?
Should you circle big?
Black. Green. 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 No.
Whoa.
What's green?
Right, what's a green?
Green.
Darker or
Any color green. Thank you.
Alright. Yes. Now here's the good news. You don't have to know why it's wrong. You don't have to say, oh gee, this is a split infinitive, or this is a run-on sentence, or whatever. You just have to know it. How about 22?
Shield.
Now remember what I was saying, SVO. What's the subject here? So here, object, subject, verb. So what you want to do is sort of think of this, kind of how do you live beyond his 28 years? Kind of think of that as going at the end. Now sometimes you got to adjust it how you read a little bit, but Sheol, whatever his name is, would have become very different artists, functioning in a very different world, had he lived beyond his 28 years. That makes a lot more sense to us than, because the 28 years is out of context when you first read the sentence. Right, what's the answer? Who says C? Who says D? Who said E? Who said B?
Pencil.
That's not pencil. Alright, let's do this. I'll give you 2 minutes. Try a couple more of these, and we're going to do the last type, and then we have some questions, and we're going to wrap it up. B, had to.
Isn't it hypochondriac when you teach yourself to read?
No, hypochondriac is when you think you're always sick.
Yeah, see, and what's the thing where you teach yourself to read?
I don't know if there's a word for that.
No,
Well, a hypochondriac is somebody who
you
thinks
think
there's
you have
always
all these
something
problems.
wrong with them. Not usually, you're imagining.
Wait, there's a word. It's like a.
You're a hot.
Oh no. She's always complaining
No.
about
Yeah.
like,
Alright, everybody focus. No hypochondriac talk.
No.
Sorry.
Wait, why won't they let you
I don't want to discuss it right now.
They've only do coach for him
We'll
role.
discuss it after the class.
What? But like the classic shirt, you're like a legend.
But red, they let red.
Mr. Gardner number 24.
What? We'll discuss it after the class.
That's not fair.
Alright, try a couple more, then we're going to shift to the last type.
Like Lord Sandwich.
How is that
No,
wrong?
324. 324.
Facing
Alright. I will circulate around the room.
Remember the study
Charles.
like, drew an ear of corn?
His drawings on all the study guides.
I wish I kept the study guides. I wish.
Probably go online. Try to
Aaron,
post them.
these study guides are the worst thing.
They were so good.
No, they're
Literally the
they're
best.
I have a
good.
piece of paper and just scribble stuff down. I
Yeah, but
couldn't
everything
read
on it was on the
anything.
test. It was
Yeah.
great.
I couldn't read
They were
anything.
funny though.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I would go to
that.
him for help. He'd be like, what do you need help with? I'll like read and study
Actually
stuff.
explain. The only one I actually got was like Calhoun and his big hair.
Yeah, but that's what's right. It's training food. But here's the problem though. Like, if you said that to somebody, they wouldn't sit there and go, that's incorrect grammar. Because it sounds strong. Just perfect. No.
I just got it right, Steve.
That doesn't mean you gotta take it over. No.
Yeah, he was being mean to me.
No, don't be mean.
I was don't be mean.
Oh yeah, I guess that makes
I'm
sense.
saying it Jason
You.
Stone.
Alright, Finish up the one you're on, please. And then we're going to move into the last one. We're actually running 3 minutes behind schedule. That's pretty good, actually.
No, truce. Truce.
All right, everyone, we are now on this page. This is page, actually the number got cut off. It's actually page 36, but you wouldn't know that because the number got cut off on the bottom. This is called paragraph improvements. It's sort of a hybrid, and this is the last thing you'll do on the test. You're sitting there for 2 hours plus, you're tired, you're disgusted, you're irritated, whatever. This is the last thing you do. There's 5 of these questions. They're kind of a hybrid of reading and grammar, and actually a little bit even a sentence completion. So what they do is they give you a short passage, and they're going to ask you questions about it. Now sometimes, like this one, 36, is just like the first type of writing questions you did. Okay? So you get a little bit of that. This one, the phrase, this is like reading. You know, what does the word such and such mean on line 9? The annoying ones are when you have to, they'll have, I don't know if it's going to be on this page, but they might say, what sentence would you substitute? I actually don't have it in here. Yeah, 39. Which of the following is the best version of this sentence? These are the most challenging ones here. Because you actually really have to understand what's going on, and you can't really piecemeal it. The strategy here really is just deal with it question by question. I wouldn't, just like reading, my advice was, I would probably not read the whole thing, because you're not going to get a lot out of it. I'd focus on the question, use that 3 W's we learned for reading, where, what do you have to deal with, and kind of focus sequentially in your piece. So in context means, based on what's going on here, which of the following is the best version of sentence 2? The West African country of Congo is a narrow strip of land on the Gulf of Guinea, about half as big as the state of Tennessee. Alright, well you can leave it like that, or you can replace it with one of these. Well, this is effectively back solving, because you're saying, okay, I might have to just read these in and see which one makes the most sense. Okay? So, try a few of these, and if you have any, answer a couple questions, or give you a couple closing remarks. It's almost 12, so anybody has to go right away. It's 11:56.
Bless
I don't care if they're doing it at all. Or it can wait.
Now, what I would suggest you do
Bless
is
you.
the last page of the packet has the answers on it. You have, one of the reasons I did this today, and as an aside, I'm doing this pretty much the same thing again next week, but it's Sunday night, if anybody wants to subject themselves to that.
Live Mr. Green.
Yeah, that was the package.
So anyway, I'm doing basically the same thing again next week. If you want to come back, the material, well, the beginning, here's what I'm going to do. If, right now, I think there's 6 people signed up for that. There's only one person who's the same. Josh.
Is it really me?
Well, I told your mom to reserve judgment until you came today.
Okay.
But if you want to come back, what I will do,
Will I be there?
Jason Green probably will be here because he's not going to do any work in between
No,
now.
I'll be here.
So here's the deal.
Is it this Sunday night?
No, it's a week from tomorrow.
Okay.
So here's the deal, just so you know. The basic information will be the same. The strategies don't change. If people come back who have been here already, I'll have separate practice material. So you'll, instead of getting the same practice stuff, which you've already done, which wouldn't make any sense, I'll have a different questions for you. So you may be actually doing something different than there are people in the room.
Okay.
Which isn't really that big of a deal.
Sounds good. Jason,
I think,
you better be here.
The best way to
Jason,
study
my
for this.
house. Jason, that's the big.
Alright, so let me just say a couple things in
Out of
closing.
zone
Well,
pocket.
if you're gonna go, just go.
Now
Let me say a couple things just in closing. Number one, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
If you thought this
Thank
was
you.
helpful, raise your hand. Alright,
And you gotta fix
it wasn't a choice. No. Here's how you, let me tell you how you get the most value out of this, all right? Just sitting here, this is pretty rapid fire. What I did in an hour and a half or so, 2 hours, typically will get spread out over a few weeks at least, sometimes 6 or 8 weeks, because you need time to work on and absorb it. But the fundamental core stuff doesn't really change. So my suggestion is, go home, try to go through your notes. If you want, I will send out the copy of the PowerPoint if you want it, and just practice. The best way to get good at this stuff is to do it. It's like anything else. You want to get good at tennis, you play tennis. You want to get good at golf, you play golf. You want to get good at eating, you eat. Yep. So, yeah. So that's the point. But here's the key. Listen to this. The key is you have to practice with purpose. If you want to learn the math strategy, you have to do it. Don't only do it when you don't have any other choice. So run through the system. What's it want? What do I know? What kind of strategy can I have? When you have the sentence completion, run through the progression. Reading, question, reading. Here you got A, not A. If you do it enough, it becomes a habit, and then it's easy. All right? It doesn't mean the questions are always easy, but the technique is. The third thing that'll help you is the best way to do stuff like this is not, at least initially, and it does change a little bit over time, to sit down and just do 6 hours of this. Not that any of you would. But there are people out there that counsel this. I don't agree with them. The best way to learn this sort of stuff is high, repetitive, low exposure, which is a fancy way of saying 15 or 20 minutes at a time, but you do it a lot. So the best thing you can do is a little bit, but often. All right. Now, what you do is you tend to increase that. So maybe you do 15 minutes a day for a couple weeks, then you go up to a half hour, 4 days out of 7, then you do an hour, because the test is long, so you have to try to build up to that. If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them. But like I said, the whole goal was that you would have a better understanding and a leg up on the test. It's October 15th in Upper Dublin. I don't know where they're giving it. But it's within a couple days, so it's about 2.5 weeks away. That's the goal. So hopefully we accomplished that. I think we did. Any questions over here? All right, so here's the deal. We're basically done. If you have a question between now and the test, you can get a hold of me. That's fine. Take all your things. And that was it. Excellent job, everyone.
Thank you,
you.
Steve.
Just make sure you don't let Mr. Greene out on the way out.
Is that the Yeah. What do you think?
He's like an elevator.